publishers test and optimize their ad revenues. And we are also a B2B startup. So today I'm going to essentially talk about using content and how this can be used to actually build sales and then revenue for your business. And I will take a lot of examples on how we've actually done it at AppShop, how we've used content, how we've used a lot of inbound marketing in general to get a lot of leads and a lot of business at AppShop. So I believe you guys should be able to see my screen shared now, which this is the presentation flow which we'll be using for the rest of the webinar. And let's talk about content, in general first. So let's look at content, right? Content is essentially it's actually a very good way using which you can help your audience. So if you look at inbound marketing, if you look at content marketing in general, if you look, the baseline here is essentially you're trying to help your audience. So before asking them for a favor, which is to use your services or your product or do business with you, you are essentially trying to show that you're helpful, and that is what content is all about. The core premise is that we are essentially out there, we're trying to help our audience. In doing so, there's also a call to action, or there's also an invite for them to work with you. So, but the core premise is always that we're out there to help our audience first. With this as the core premise, we'll look at the rest of the session and understand, how content marketing can help you in your businesses, in your companies. Before we jump onto that, we'll also talk about the overall structure. So my plan is to essentially wrap up the whole presentation in about 40 minutes and keep the rest of the 20 minutes for Q&A so that I can answer questions. And of course, if you have any questions while I'm presenting, please take a note of them, put them down as they were pointed out in that questions panel, and we'll come back to them at the Q&A time. So before we talk about content, we need to first talk about audience. So whenever we do something, whenever we write out something, whenever we, look at the distribution, whenever we look at creating some value out of what we're doing, one of the core aspects or one of the core or most important thing is to understand who are you doing it for. So one thing which, a lot of you people who have experience in marketing would understand is a buyer persona. So we will today first start the session by understanding, before we actually talk about content, we'll talk about understanding the buyer persona or understanding it. So this is nothing, complicated in general. Essentially what we're talking about here is just your user, your intended audience, and essentially, listing out certain details about them, doing some basic research about them. While this is common sense, but this really helps, just making sure that you have your whole team is on the same page about who are you writing this content about, actually has a great impact on the content, the quality of the content, the tone of the content, and so many aspects about the content. Once you have the whole team on the same page about it, it has a huge impact on all these aspects. So buyer persona is essentially an exercise which I would encourage all of the attendees today. If you've already done it in the past, go do it once again with your refreshed knowledge about your audience, and is something in general which is a very good exercise for all marketing departments as well. And some common techniques which you can use here is, very simply, you could create a small interview for your buyers, your existing users, your existing customers. Give them a small, because this can be a little detailed, so just give them a free voucher, a coupon, Amazon coupon, Flipkart coupon in return for the time, because I believe they would be investing at least 40 to 50 minutes of their time in this interview. It does not necessarily have to be a questionnaire which you send them. You can also, take out a slot from them, which in my opinion works better. Just ask them for a slot of your time, say half an hour or 1 hour, and just go give them a call and ask all those questions over a phone call instead of sending them a questionnaire. So essentially, you are going to interview your existing users and prospects, understand them better, which is a great way. So especially for startups which don't have existing users, you can go ahead and do this with your prospects. However, it is always better to do this buyer persona with your customers, because a lot of times what we've seen in your funnels is, you have a lot of prospects which may not eventually, they might be the right audience which in your opinion you're targeting, but at the end of the day they may not become paid customers. And we've seen this with our startup as well. We've seen certain segment of users who are very interested in understanding about a product. So since I told you that AdPush helps publishers test and optimize their ad revenues, we essentially work with a lot of publishers ranging from, who would have page views like 100, 200 page views a day to publishers, top tier publishers doing millions of page views every day. So while, we were also early stage, we came across the same issue wherein, we had a lot of early stage publishers, the long tail publishers doing about 100, 200 page views a day, very, very interested in our product. But at the end of the funnel, when we actually gave them the solution, we found out that, the percentage conversion which we got with this segment was far lower than the other segments. So we understood that this is not the core segment which you need to focus on. So it's always better to focus on customers, but in case you don't have customers, the next best thing is of course prospects, qualified prospects for your services or product. So you could go out and do these interviews with your prospects. You can look at your top 10 customers, and when you will look at your top 10 customers, you will definitely see some common parameters, some common factors which will help you understand these buyers and help create buyer personas with them. And if you have a sales team, the feedback from your sales team could also be valuable. Although it is always recommended to keep the number of hops minimum whenever you're doing such studies, so it's great to have a direct one-on-one interaction. So I think the best thing which you can do out of all the options is look at your top 10 customers and spend some time with them, interview them, and get started on your buyer personas, which essentially is going to be all the details which you can see on your screen. Now you're going to talk to them and ask them about what their job role is, what their job title is. So let's say if you're building a software which is let's say a support software, so the person who is going to be a decision maker would be probably the person head of either operations or support, customer support. If you're building something such as AdPush, in our case, our decision makers in smaller segments, the medium segment would typically be the owner of the website, and in the larger publishers, the decision maker, their job role will be ad operations. They would essentially be head of ad operations. So it is very important to understand what is the job role and title about who your decision maker is going to be. Understand, interview them about what are the key skills. Now this is very important. Talking about skills will be very relevant. Whatever exercise which we are going to do right now will have great impact on the content which we will create, and I'll give you an example of this. So when we were interviewing our, when we were creating the buyer persona for our audiences and we were talking to these large publishers, when we spoke about job skills, one thing which constantly came up was ad servers, and in particular one ad server called DFP, which is called double click for publishers. All the people who work in ad operations with these large publishers, they had to be experts, or they had to have excellent knowledge about DFP and ad servers in general. So I'll tell you shortly how this information helped us, but this is something which came out early on and has helped us a lot since then. So you need to talk to these buyers, talk about their job role, their titles, talk about their job skills, talk about what is their internal performance KPI. This will also not only help you in your content, but probably also help improve your services and products. So you can understand what is their performance which internally their company is measuring them with, and tie this up to your services or product and your content. So if they are going to be assessed in, let's say if it's a customer success team which you're working with and you have a software for support, and they are being measured with their time to response, how quickly they're responding to their support queries, that is a performance KPI for them, internally being measured in their company. And for you, it will be important to structure your content around that and even your services and product around that. So we will of course come at the advantages of measuring all these asks right now and tying this up to the content which you create at the next step. Talk about the tools which they've used, talk about the goals which they have in the company, what are the key challenges for them. If appropriate, also talk about the demographics, personal demographics such as, what age bracket are they in, what probably would be their household income, what background, what kind of education do they have, certain details, and as I said, if you're getting on the call with the user for the first time, this may not be appropriate, but if you build a relationship, you can get these details and they will of course help you a lot. For example, in some products, the decision makers are females. In certain products, so in our audience, we've seen that 80 to 85% of decision makers are essentially, when we're talking about ad operations, are actually males. So this information will actually really help you, when you're creating your content, the tone, the topics, the subjects, and all of that. And we'll connect the ask with the content very shortly. Talk about their recent purchases, talk about the decision tree, which is very, very important. Try to understand how are they currently making these decisions. Are these decisions, the approval sought from their finance teams? If these approvals are sought out from their internal teams, perhaps, in certain companies, the job role you're targeting and the key decision maker actually could be very different. So it's very important to get on the same page. Understand, when you know who the decision maker is, understand who all are the other people who are actually helping that decision maker take the decision. And the decision tree is something which will be very important, which will help you understand what are the different steps your decision maker needs to go through to be able to take that decision of purchasing your product or your services. And of course, understand what are the current communities and websites they actively read. So, when we speak to marketing managers, they tend to visit a lot of communities like inbound.org, growth hackers. When we talk to ad operations specialists, they tend to visit a lot of communities on Reddit about ad operations, on Google+, which really helped us. Now this helps in not only creating content, but also distribution, and we'll talk about that shortly. But when you're creating a buyer persona, make sure that you have all these details listed out in your questionnaire, and make sure you ask these questions when you get on a call with your user or your customer. Like I said, it will take at least 30 minutes, 40 minutes. This has to be a very detailed questionnaire, because the information that you collect here is going to be the base, will set the base using which you will create your content, do your distribution, and implement content marketing in general. So let's look at what's next, which is the content. So when we look at content, you need to understand that the content which you create needs to be very, very relevant to the company as well as to the persona. When I say the company, the topic in general. So I'll give you an example of a mistake which we made early on. So content and distribution are actually very, closely tied in. What we've seen, and one of the biggest, when I talk to people, one of the biggest issue which a lot of content marketers come up with is that, we are creating great content, but we're not getting enough readers, we're not getting enough audience. So, we also had this problem initially, and the answer for that is distribution, which we will talk about in the next few slides. So we were looking at this problem, and in order to solve the problem of distribution, we actually created content which was very, very relevant to the distribution channels which we were creating, but they were not relevant to the persona. So that's one big, issue which we faced early on, and was actually a mistake. So we were creating content which would get us a lot of page views and impressions from a community called Hacker News. And once you get onto the homepage of Hacker News, you can easily get 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 page views in a matter of day, and it has a huge it's a huge distribution channel. You'll get a lot of prominent people sharing about your content on various social channels, Twitter, Facebook. So we found out to be a great source of traffic, but what we understood sometime down the line is that we were not getting any conversions from it. So when we came back and tried to understand the problem again, what we realized is that while that content was very, very interesting, it had a lot of sharing going on, it had a very good viral coefficient, but the problem was that it was not very relevant to our persona. So it is very important to create content which is relevant to your company, which what you're doing. If you're building something, let's say about support, if you're building the support desk, you have to cover topics which will be relevant to all these decision makers, these customer success teams, and in general the problems which they are facing. So while it has to be relevant to the persona, it does not necessarily have to be relevant to your services or your product. So now this is a very important difference here. You don't have to. So if you're, in our case, if we are talking about ad revenue optimization, if at ad push up we're helping publishers increase their ad revenues, it is not necessary that all our articles will be around increasing ad revenues. While that is a very relevant topic, we will write about it, but if we are only writing about it, then it leaves us with very few topics to cover. And at the same time, it may not be something, which the audience is actively looking for. So we need to, also tap into SEO, which is a great distribution channel for us. And if somebody is not looking for your particular product or services at hand, we do not have to miss that audience. So we need to make sure that our content is not just relevant to the product and services, but relevant to the persona. So we need to also talk about other issues which this persona is facing. So in our case, when we spoke to our ad operations, decision makers, the ad operations people, teams, the ad operation heads, we found out that they would search a lot about DFP usage. DFP is a tool which they use, and if you can see, we were able to list down, when we were creating these buyer personas, we were listing down the job skills and the tool used. So we found out that DFP is a very, very important tool for them, and they very often, on a very regular basis, they are looking for help with respect to DFP. They would get stuck somewhere in the tool. So we started writing, some guides around DFP. We started creating some small help tutorials around specific issues on DFP, which a lot of our audience will actually search. So that's a great way, right? When you're trying to help your audience, you will talk about and write about everything there is that they are concerned about. Once you're very sure about who your decision maker is, talk and write about everything which, you can help them, and talk and write about everything they're searching about on the internet. Talk and write about every problem which they are going to face, right? So that is essentially a great way to create content. One thing now, when we talk about the tone, we need to make sure that we are not promoting our services or product in that content. This is very important, because when we build this relationship with our audience, we have to give them something first without any expectation of any return. In the sense, we need to genuinely help them. And when you're genuinely helping them, you need to make sure that you're not promoting your products or services. So this does not have to be promotional. Your content which you will create in this step, we need to make sure that it is not promotional in any way. And it should be pure educational. The purpose, like I said, should be to help the audience, to help the reader. We need to make sure that our content is very thorough, it is up to date and well designed. When I say well designed, I mean, if you look at a lot of guides, this means using a lot of illustrations, relevant illustrations. It means using a very good structure. A lot of times I've seen content which is very, very relevant, which is great quality, but it has not been structured well. And keep in mind, the attention span of a reader today is very, very short, and it is reducing at a very high pace. So your first paragraph, if you can't nail it down in the first paragraph, it is very unlikely that the reader will actually go out and read the rest of your content. We've created, in fact, one of the articles which we wrote about banner blindness. Banner blindness is a very common issue which our audience faces. It's actually it's almost like a report. It's about 2,500, 3,000 words. But the reason why we're able to still get a lot of people to read about it, and we've used heat maps to understand how far they go in reading that content. The reason why I've been able to do it is, because we nail it down in the first paragraph. So we clearly, communicate the advantage or the benefit of reading this whole article in the first paragraph, and we create that curiosity in that first paragraph or two, which is the reason why somebody would continue reading your article. So while your content needs to be thorough, up to date, well designed, it needs to be, you need to make sure that you're able to communicate your benefits, communicate the value of that content in the first paragraph, or maximum the first two paragraphs. A lot of people who create content for B2C audiences, I would say the number of the length of the article should not be greater than 500, 600 words if your audience is consumers, because they tend to have an even shorter attention span. If you're creating B2B content which is aimed for other businesses, for these decision makers, trust me, there is no problem with 500, 600, 1,000, even 2,500, 3,000 words. In fact, there was a recent study using which somebody had actually crawled you know, 200,000 or 300,000 keywords on search and try to create a relationship between the number of words and their ranking. So what it was seen was actually for B2B queries, articles which are about 1800 to 2000 words tend to rank better on search engines than other articles. So if you're writing somewhere about 1800 to 2000 words, your chances of ranking on search engines, you know, in the top 5 are actually greater than other articles. So there is no problem creating very thorough, very detailed articles, as long as, you know, you're not just stretching the limit. You're talking about something which is really relevant. You're trying to cover as much of information and value in that content. I think it's good if you're going, you know, and creating 2000 word articles also. And we've seen people read all of them, and the kind of relationship which you build your audience by creating these very thorough articles is that, you know, a very positive one, in which the audience already has started seeing you as a thought leader. And of course, titles are also very important. In fact, I would say in your content, 30, 35, 36, 40% of the you know, contribution in terms of the success of that content will come from the title. So the title, no matter how good content you create, no matter how thorough it is, if the title is not good enough, then, you know, people will not even open and view it. The virality coefficient which you see in articles, the number of shares which they get from every user reading them, is very much dependent on the titles. And, you know, internally what we've done is, whenever we publish an article, we ask the content creator to actually create 15 to 20 titles for every article before they publish it. By doing so, what you will realize is, you know, you'll see that a lot of things which don't come to your mind immediately, but when you're under this task to actually create 15 to 20 titles, you'll be able to see how much you can do with your titles. And we've done a lot of A/B testing with titles. It's completely worth it. And this was a great learning for us early on. In fact, let me see if I can actually share one article with you. The one about banner blindness, which I was talking about. The first title we gave it, in fact, if you search for it, it ranks on the first page for this particular query. When we actually first published this article, the title was not this. The title was how to reduce banner blindness or something like this. But after, you know, a lot of testing, what we finally found out was, when you change the title to how humans read web pages, which is basically evoking curiosity in the mind of the reader, we were able to get a lot of, so the virality coefficient of number of shares which you get for every reader, it actually shot up. So we actually saw that this title in particular was working way better than all the other titles which we had seen. So it is very important to make sure that, you know, once you create your content, you spend enough time creating these titles. Make sure, you know, the first 2 paragraphs are very, very you know, thoroughly written, and they're clearly communicating the benefits of the whole article in a short summary to the reader, and gives them the motivation to actually go ahead and read that whole article. The next thing, after you've created the content, and yeah, we have to actually, you know, since we are going to essentially cover this in 40 minutes, each of the topic which I'm actually talking about is something which you can actually study and talk about for days, is, you know, not more than that. So just content, for example, is something, you know, which you can actually talk for days and days and days, and, you know, still not be able to cover all of it. So I think the purpose of the webinar here is to talk about key things which you should remember when you're creating and distributing content. And this should also be inspiration for you in a way in which you can go back and start reading about it. I'll also share some resources which I actively read, and I would recommend all of you to read, to continue learning what we're covering in this webinar, so that you can also continue learning about what more you can do, you know, when you're creating content, doing the distribution, creating personas, or any step during this webinar, or with content marketing in general. So the next thing, you know, which like I pointed out, you know, is a very common problem for a lot of content marketers out there, is, you know, the distribution of content. So the most common problem which I get across is that we're creating content, but we're not getting readers, we're not getting the audience, there is not enough people reading our content. So the reason for that is that, you know, you're not probably spending enough time on distribution, or you're not creating content with distribution in mind. And there are a lot of ways using which you can distribute your content, which we will talk about shortly. But for us also, when we wrote out the first 5 to 10 articles on a blog, this was, I think, back in 2013, we found out that, there were not enough audience. The analytics would never show, a build-up of audience. We weren't on a month-on-month basis seeing any growth in our readers. Is when we actually realized that we are not actually doing the distribution. So a lot of people consider that, content creation is essentially the main task which you're geared up with, but that actually is not. You need to not only just create the content, but go out and distribute it, which means getting the readers. So and there's a very good rule which we internally employ for this, which is called the 50-50 rule of writing content and distribution. So when you create content, and if that whole exercise has taken you about, let's say, 10 hours or 15 hours, you need to devote the same number of hours into the distribution of content as well. And there are a lot of ways using which you can, distribute your content. There are a lot of channels which we are going to talk about here. I'm sure a lot of you would know about Reddits. So you can go and browse a lot of subreddits. Typically, you will have subreddits relevant to almost all audiences for all topics, whether that is support, from entrepreneurs to businesses, to SEO, to internet marketing, to affiliate marketing, to ad operations, like I said. So you would have subreddits almost all topics you can think of. There would be a lot of subreddits, so you can distribute the content there. So Reddit is a very strict community with respect to what you share. It is very important that you understand their rules, the etiquettes, as they call it the Reddit etiquettes. So you have to make sure that you're very thoroughly aware of them and you're following them, because if you don't follow them correctly, you will get bashed by the community there and probably get your account banned or something, or your domain banned as well. So make sure that you're not just going there and spamming the community with your links. You should also indulge in a lot of conversations in those communities. So it's actually all about building a relationship. You can't expect people to trust you to follow your articles, your content, unless they respect you. And to be able to get their respect, you need to actually have thoughtful conversations. You need to have a lot of participation. You need to participate in all those conversations which they have. So it's very important to understand and be part of that community. And trust me, it's not that it's not scalable. Once you start interacting in those communities and build that initial reputation, after that it becomes much more easier and scalable. Google Plus, we found out, has been a very good way of distribution. There are a lot of communities in Google Plus which we see that have still a lot of very active users. Surprisingly, our response for our audience, Google Plus has given a better response than Facebook groups. With even Facebook groups, in fact, we've seen Facebook groups, since they get a lot of spam content by a lot of people, people have become immune to it. So which is why Facebook groups for us at least didn't work out that well. Google Plus was actually much better. We've seen LinkedIn groups. In fact, LinkedIn also has a LinkedIn Pulse now. So after you publish your content on your website, you can actually go and publish it on LinkedIn as well. We've seen for particular websites which have a lot of image-based content, and especially maybe even female audience targeted content, Pinterest works great. You will see a lot of Pinterest boards. You will have a lot of people who are just actively, especially from the female audience, very active there. So we've seen a lot of companies and startups actually who are active and targeting the female audience. Their response from Pinterest, and especially if it is image-based content, has been really, really great compared to all the other channels. Hacker News is a great community if you're targeting entrepreneurs, and if you have a technical audience, if your buyer persona is, let's say, developers. Hacker News, I think the best community you can target will be Hacker News, because the whole audience of developers or engineers, you'll see them hanging around there. There are a lot of forums. If you do research about your audience, you'll find out a lot of forums. In fact, very interesting thing. So recently I came across a company who was trying to sell a product for pilots. In fact, I think it was software, some simulation software for pilots, and they were actively participating in forums, international forums, which in which pilots participate. In fact, there's a very popular forum in which more than 25-30,000 pilots actively participate and communicate and share their learning. So they actually started participating and distributing their content, and it worked great for them. You could do a lot of influencer outreach. By influencer outreach, I mean you create an article. So this can actually be done in two ways. You create an article which is very relevant to your audience, and then reach out to an influencer. When I say an influencer, I mean somebody who has a lot of following, maybe 25-30,000 followers on Twitter or any community whichever they're active in. You could actually reach out to those people with a very, very short, small email introducing yourself and essentially asking them, if they'd be interested in reading that article which you've created. And you don't actually have to nudge them for a share. If they actually like it, I'm sure they will more often than not, they will actually share your article as well, which will not only get you this influencer's attention, but also get you a lot of referral traffic when they share your content. Another way to do it is actually also host, like small online, panels, in the sense that, you could create a question which is relevant to your audience and then send this question to a list of influencers and have their answer or say on it, and then just publish it. So what you will see is, by having these small interviews or small panels online in which you're reaching out to a set of these influencers and getting their answers, you will see that once these posts are published, these influencers themselves tweet out or share the URL of the published post, because they have been covered or featured in that post. So this is something which has also worked great for us. In the past, we've done a lot of posts in which we've sought input from people like Neil Patel, from people like who are super relevant to our audiences, and you'll see that once we publish these posts, we just send them a short email mentioning that the post is published and this is the link where they can see it, and you'll see them automatically tweeting about it or sharing about it. In fact, there is a very interesting email template which you can use as well when you're sending out these emails to influencers, because typically they get bombed with a lot of emails. So a very short and crisp email is something which will really work. So ideally it should be just 2 paragraphs, one small email, the first paragraph talking about just giving a small introduction about yourself, and then just write down what you want in a very short crisp 1 paragraph, right? That should work. So there are a lot of very good templates for that, which you can again A/B test and experiment with. You can also syndicate content, or you do guest posting. Posting in the last 6 months or so, at least for me personally, the value has been actually diminishing now, but we've seen in the past that guest posts have done really well. So when you write great content and don't have an audience already, you can go talk to, so your challenge there when you're an early stage blog is that you are writing great content but you don't have enough audience. Similarly, there are other blogs in the community which have a lot of audience and they're struggling to create great content. They want great content because they have a good audience and they want to manage their reputation. So when you reach out to these blogs, you can actually go and talk about your content, you can pitch your content, and if you get published, that's a great way to start a relationship with your audience. So in our case, we've got published on a lot of websites, ranging from Kissmetrics to entrepreneur.com, a lot of Alexa 500 websites, and a lot of websites which are relevant to our audience, and that's how we've started these relationships. So when we go to this different website, we will talk about a very interesting article there, and a lot of people will actually go back and understand and see your blog as well from there. So they'll see who the writer is so that they can read. So if they really like your content, they'll actually want to read more, which is why they'll actually read about you. It's also all right to link out to some of your content which you've created on the blog. So when we've published, so I remember we published one post on Conversion Excel about optimization, and we had linked a few of our other articles on our blog from there. We got a ton of traffic from there. And when these posts were republished onto other websites, so we got not only a lot of links, but like I said, a lot of traffic. This also, so a lot of posts can also be focused on search engine optimization. Typically, when you're writing the content, you need to make sure what is the distribution channel which you're going to apply for them. Writing a post for SEO is very different from writing a post for distribution. So when you're writing for SEO, your research needs to begin with keywords. And considering that this is not the topic which we're going to talk about in detail today, But it is important to understand that when you create content, your distribution strategy will play a very important role in understanding what topic you're writing about, apart from the audience knowledge. You can also refurbish your existing content which is doing well and create, infographics, put it on SlideShare, create decks which can help you not only get again a lot of relevant traffic. In fact, we've seen that some of our content has done decent on the blog, but when you create an infographic out of it, it got many more shares as well as a lot more traffic to our websites. When we say shares, it actually brings us a lot of relevant links as well. So we wrote an article about the history of online marketing, and this article in particular did, let me in fact show you that. So this article actually gets us a lot of traffic from search engine. So when people search for a history of online marketing, online advertising, online, advertising history, a lot of such terms, you'd see that this gets us a lot of traffic. This is a post which we actually published in 2013. And this turned out to be a very, very long post, but we've seen that a lot of people have enjoyed reading it. In fact, some of the people who early, were active in the 90s and actually created, in fact, the person who created RTB, real-time bidding, shared this article. So, we created a very, very long post about it, and as you can see, it goes on and on. I think it's about 3,500 words, but we've seen a lot of people sharing and reading it. But what we realized is that this could also be a great infographic. So then what we did was we created an infographic around the history of online advertising, and that also got us a lot of inbound links as well as traffic. Let's check that. In fact, you can see it in the recommended images here as well. And if you go through these links, you'll see that a lot of these, out of these keyword, these listings, a lot of them would actually have our infographic in them. So we've seen a lot of traffic coming this way. So that's there. Let me in fact show you the infographic also, the particular one on our blog. Yeah, this is the one on our blog. You'll see that we managed to publish a lot of versions of it. We refurbished it, created some decks out of it on SlideShare, and that gets us. So this is the same post, but all we've done is we've collected that information which was written in the post and created an infographic out of it. And this also got us a lot of links more than anything else, and helped us in SEO. So there are a lot of ways using which you can distribute your content, and the buyer persona which you created from the first step here, and since we saw about the online communities websites which people like to visit, would really help you in understanding and nailing down your content distribution strategy. Similarly, when you're creating this content, the understanding of your audience over here will help you understand and create more relevant content, and this will be great feedback on what topics to write about. Now, let's say you have a good buyer persona, you have created great content, you're working well on the distribution. The next step is how can you translate that traffic into leads for your sales team. And there are various ways. Now, this is the easy part. Once you've created the content, once you've taken care of the distribution, this is actually the easy part. Because all you need to do is, put some banners, create some drip training programs, which is basically email based, put a hello bar, and I'll show you some examples, create an ebook to collect these leads. We can also do some mentions about your services on the blog, not inside the content, with proper disclosures. So, and if it's a very relevant article, let's say if you're talking about, something which is essentially just done by a product or services, it's okay to put something at the bottom of the article with a proper disclosure in which you're promoting your services or your product. Let's take a look at some examples. So if you can see, there is a small hello bar at the bottom of this article. In fact, let me actually show you on the blog. So right now, this one which you see is a gray color. We're testing the black color here now. But this small hello bar which can be closed is something which you can place on your blog, and this can help you create leads. So when we have an audience, relevant audience visiting our website, and they see this, if it's relevant for them, they would actually click on this and probably subscribe or fill the lead form for us. So this is an example of your, hello bar. You can also see this small banner which we have at the bottom of all articles. If you open any article from AdPushUp, at the bottom you will have this banner. This also brings us a lot of traffic on our main application and gets us a lot of leads. Similarly, you could have the ebooks. We also have ebooks, as you can see here in this portion. We give users an option to download the ebooks, and once they fill in the form, opt-in form for it, as well as provide us their contact details, and our sales team, this is that will review, qualify these leads, and then start working on them. So by using our blog, we're generating, of course, one of the best advantages which you get out of this is these leads are more or less free, right? And of course, in the initial stages, creating content, creating such a pipeline is a lot of efforts, but you have to also see that this is evergreen, right? If you stop working on my blog even now, we'll still continue to get a lot of these leads. So if you look at the whole lifetime, so over a lifetime, the ROI from a blog, it's very, very positive. While in the short term, you might end up investing a lot of time, which may have a higher value than compared to your paid channels. But in the long term, you will see that the kind of leads which you get from inbound channels, content in particular, is very high. They're very qualified leads, and the kind of conversion ratio which you get from inbound leads is much higher than your paid channels, because typically these leads have already engaged with you. They've seen that you're creating content of value, and you've created this thought leadership in which they already respect you. Whereas when you look at these outbound channels, a lot of people in the outbound channels will perceive, when you go out selling to these people, they'll perceive you as somebody who's trying to push them into, using your product or services. Whereas on the other hand, in content marketing, these people have actually themselves, applied, or they have themselves expressed their interest in understanding about your services and your product. So that has a great difference as well. So the conversion in rate which you get in these leads is also very high. And like I said, this is actually the easy part. You can create these banners, ebooks, opt-in forms, and all to get these leads. Now jumping on to measurement and analytics, this is a great way to understand what is working for you and what is not working. There are a lot of questions which you can ask, yourself or your team when you're actively doing content marketing. And just by keeping a tap on these things, you will understand what is working better for you. So in our case, we found out that, a certain article was bringing in 50% of the leads for us. So we went in depth, we tried to figure out what was the reason and, replicate that success. So you need to understand what is working great for us and then double down on it. Which channels are giving you the most traffic, which channels are converting better, which type of content gets more organic reach. In our case, we found out that a particular keyword, if used in the title, gets us much higher organic reach. We have a mailer. We've seen that, whenever we're talking about AdSense, which is a very common tool and revenue source for our audience, we've seen that the open rate and the click-through rates shoot up if you're using the word AdSense in the subject line and in the title of the post. So, this way we tried creating more content around AdSense, more angles to it, more information about it, things which publishers don't already know about AdSense. So similarly, there could be a lot of insights which you can unlock simply by diving into your data. And how you can do it is actually very simple. You can use tools like Google Analytics, Mixpanel. These tools will really help you in getting all these data. But it's very important, that on a weekly basis you sit down with your team or go through the data and try to figure out and create some insights out of it. So essentially that's what we have to cover, and in fact we're pretty much on schedule. So let's jump into the questions now. Please feel free to ask any questions which you have with respect to the presentation I just gave, as well as with content marketing in general, or if you're facing any issues in particular. Divya, can we start taking questions now?
Yes, sure, please. So everyone, if you have any questions, you can just type in the question panel on the right hand side. In the meantime, I'm just launching out a poll for the people who are interested in joining digital marketing course from Digital Vidya. And we have started getting some questions. I'll read out the questions for you, Ankit. Himanshu is asking for any tools which you recommend for data analytics.
So which stage are you looking at when you look, say, data analytics? Are you talking about your content? If it is the performance of your content, Mixpanel or GA is great. There are a lot of heat map tools, which you can use to understand how further down on the page people go. So, depending upon, so data analytics is a huge term, right? Which particular question, which particular insights which you're trying to figure out, I think the tool which will depend on that. Internally, we use tools like Mixpanel and GA for measurement, and for distribution, we have built some small scripts which help us in mailing. There is a tool called Outreach Ninja which helps us in outreach. So there are different tools depending upon the purpose which you're trying to fulfill, I think. But if it is specifically for measuring the performance of your content, GA and Mixpanel are best.
Great, thank you so much. Someone was asking about drip targeting programs. So
Sure.
how can
So I'll cover that. In fact, there is a very interesting question which I just saw from Monica as well, which is why will influencers answer our email, right? So see, Monica, when you have influencers, they have a huge audience of following on social channels, whether that is Twitter, Facebook, or any channel. So for them also, it is important to stay in touch with that channel. And of course, an influencer cannot create so many insights, on a very regular basis because they have their own work to attend to. Which is why for influencers, it is very important to share great content with their audiences, because when they share great content with their audiences, it is actually helping them because they become a source of getting good information for their followers. So when the influencers see great content, they will actually want to share it because they want to also create this great reputation with their followers. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's get to the other question. What was that again?
It was about drip targeting programs.
Correct. So drip emails are actually a very great way to build thought leadership for people who come on a blog. We will ask them to participate in a small course. So we'll create a small course which is, let's say, how to use DFP in 10 days or how to optimize your AdSense account in 10 days. And every day we will send them a small email, 500, 600 words, which will be, the natural progression which will then have with the program. So basically we're delivering a complete course over emails, and by the end of the course we will reach a point where we can talk about something which is relevant for our product and services and for that audience as well. So for somebody wanting to increase their AdSense revenue, we'll teach them everything. In the end we'll say, hey, you can also use a software to do this, and here's a software, so give it a 30-day trial.
Thank you so much. Next question is regarding, have you used LI for distribution? If yes, please share your experience, and if no, then why not?
I'm sorry, which channel, what have we used for distribution?
LI. No, it's LinkedIn. Okay.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. So yes, we have used LinkedIn, and LinkedIn works great. So LinkedIn, of course, while a lot of sales people use it for prospecting, we've seen that. So there are two things with LinkedIn. One is, of course, the organic reach which you can get from things like Pulse. So you have your profile, add all the influencers, add all the people in your community or your audience buyer personas in your LinkedIn profile, add them, and then you push something in LinkedIn Pulse, they automatically get a notification. So that's a great way to actually distribute your content to the right audience. Similarly, we've also experimented with paid. So if your targeting is very, very accurate, you can actually use paid LinkedIn as well to generate a lot of audience for your content. And we've seen that we get a very good customer acquisition cost, very good customer acquisition cost when we are working with LinkedIn paid too.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next is from Shubha. She's asking, hi Ankit, awesome presentation. What tools do you use for content creation, and what does your team of content creation looks like in terms of skills?
Great. Great question. I'll tackle the first one, the second part first, which is what does a team of content creators look like? So we've actually taken, one person who was ex-media. So he was a writer for a popular newspaper, and there we, gave him access to all the knowledge and information about inbound marketing, about content marketing, and communities like inbound.org, growth hackers have been great help. On the other hand, the other person which we have, so we have a 3 people team right now. The other person which we have for content creation came with the online background, wherein he understood online marketing very well. He understood about analytics very well, but he was not very active in writing content, and there we actually worked on creating content. So there is no fixed formula for it, but when you look at a content creator, there are certain things which you need. They have to have analytical mindset. They need to understand marketing. They need to understand that at the end of the day, you're trying to create readership. So you need to write article and contents that way, and similarly they need to understand writing content in general. So if you look at these things, while you may not be able to get a checklist or out of this a check on all the items, but maximum things which you can get a check on, that's great.
Thank you so much. Moving to next question, it's from Sandeep. He's asking what matrices you use when you put up content out there.
Great. So, for us, when we are looking at from a sales perspective, the key metric is the number of leads generated per content piece, right? That's the final answer, but that answer does not become clear very early on, because if you've just published your content right now, it is not necessary that you'll probably get a lead out of it straight away. So while the best way to measure the performance or the ROI of an article is to understand the value of the leads they are generating, but in the short term, this will of course be the viral coefficient. How many shares are we getting for every reader? That would be a very important metric to measure. On the other hand, you could also look at engagement numbers, like the time on site on that particular article, the bounce rate with that particular article, which are something which you can measure immediately. When we do A/B testing after the articles go live, that is what we check for, essentially the viral coefficients, and yeah, pretty much the engagement numbers. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. Moving to next question, it's from Hari. He is asking some tips regarding content for SEO friend. How to make your content SEO friendly.
Okay. So a lot of you, I'm sure would still. So this is something which I face a lot when people talk about SEO. A lot of people actually talk about also link building and all those things. So one thing which we've seen now is just put link building away. The value of link building has almost diminished quite a bit in the last few years. And in fact, some of the articles which you've seen, the reason I'm talking about link building first is I want to make sure when I talk about SEO, nobody is confused about confusing this with link building too. So make sure, in fact, some of the best articles which get a lot of SEO traffic for us have zero inbound links to them, pointing to them. So that goes on to show the value of link building. Now the second part is, how do you ensure that SEO is well? This is a whole topic in itself, but I'll tell you what we do internally. So the Yoast plugin, the SEO Yoast plugin in WordPress, that has a checklist which you can pretty much follow. And make sure that you're not writing the content for search engines. Make sure that the content which you write is actually great for your audience. And I think that's about it. You don't have to actually stuff more keywords, increase the keyword density and stuff like that. We've never actually focused on things like this, and still our articles have been able to rank well for search engines. But make sure you take a look at those checklists in the Yoast plugin. We've seen it to be very effective and very, very useful.
Thank you so much. Next question is from Kaushik. He's asking, I've started portal to list highway food joints in India. Can you help me get more traffic as engagement part?
So I think when you're talking about something like this in general, I think your biggest contributor is actually going to be search. Other than that, if you're looking for distribution, this will be a slightly more complicated area, but what you could probably do is look at all the, actually not, in fact, if you look at it, there are a lot of communities talking about food, right from, there's one called Eatlo, and there are a lot of communities actually which on Facebook, in fact there are particular websites which are especially very popular. So this is a big audience. You can, if you start your distribution in these communities, whether that is through Facebook, Google Plus, or these particular forums where a lot of foodies discuss new places which they visit, I think that could be a great way to distribute your content. You can actually, I'm not sure if this will work, but in a lot of Zomato reviews, you could actually growth hack with it. So all these popular joints which you talk about, write those reviews on Zomato too with a link. I'm not sure if they take links right now, but if they do, you could also put your link to your website out of those reviews. So it's a big audience out there, especially when you're talking about food.
Thank you so much. Moving to next question is from Pankaj. He's asking how a person can use social sites to increase our content marketing.
So the same Pankaj, I mean, as you can see, these social websites will have communities. Not only are they good for people, so in the sense of sharing, when somebody reads your articles and shares them on Facebook or Twitter or whatever the social community they're part of, but these sites also have particular communities which you can leverage and participate in, build a good relationship and distribute your content there.
So much. Next question is from Shubha again. She's asking, once you learn few details of your buyers, how can you do a research on what things they like to read?
So, it's of course, buyer persona learning is an ongoing effort. So once you have some basic details, let's say, which communities they're already participating in, just keep a tab on them. So, if for our audience now, once we know that they're actively participating in a Reddit community, subreddit called AdOps, if you know about that, we will actively, keep a check on it, not only for distributing our content, but to also look for new topics, which are picking up trend. So for example, recently, a lot of people started talking about a concept called header bidding, which is relevant to only our audience, ad operations. The moment we found out that, we created an article about it and started distributing it across all those communities, and it's really helped. So I think being part of those communities and your audience is going to be the only way using which you can stay updated and actually learn more about your audience.
Thank you so much. Next question is from Geetu. She's asking, what is recommended frequency of creating and publishing content, daily or hourly?
Again, this would again depend upon your audience. In our case, for example, we publish 2 articles a week, typically Tuesdays and Thursdays. We've seen the open rates to be much higher on Tuesdays and Thursdays compared to other days of the week. How often would you publish is, again, like I said, the audience thing. If you have a consumer audience, if your blog is basically targeting readers, not business readers in particular, you could keep it a daily or a weekly, I mean a daily thing also. Whether hourly and all, I think that would depend upon your capability. If you have a very large team and you're capable of doing hourly articles for consumer audience, that's great, as long as you're also actively working on distribution and not just creating content.
Thank you so much. Moving to next question, it's from Kinjal. She's asking, how can banners help to generate leads?
Right. So the reason why we're using banners here is, to bring traffic for our lead generating pages. So see, you already have traffic. Let's assume you already have traffic on your blog post, and you're already getting a lot of traffic, but putting that banner there highlighting your USP, that is, you're promoting your services or your product. If people who are interested and notice that banner, they will actually click on it and they'll go to your lead sign up page or something. So in our particular case with that push up, on the bottom we have this banner promoting our services and the product, and whenever somebody reads an article they read the bottom of the article and see the banner, they already read the post, which means that we've created this relationship there. They understand our thought leadership, they like the article, which is why they read the bottom of the post, and there they see a banner promoting us. If they see something relevant to what their need is, they will click on the banner and open the lead page and fill the sign up details. They'll just sign up over there.
Thank you so much. Next question is from Subhashini. She's asking about the effectiveness of subreddits.
Yeah, so again, this has worked great for us, especially when you have audiences which have a large community on Reddit. And you'll see a lot of programmers there, you'll see a lot of entrepreneurs there, you'll see a lot of, people generally active in business communities there. So depending upon you'll find a lot of, people who are interested in science there, you'll find a lot of people interested in food there. So subreddits have worked great as long as you follow the Reddit etiquettes properly and you participating within it. I think subreddits can be a very good source for generating traffic. And personally, if you go and search about AppShop on Reddit with the domain name search, you'll see that we've created shared a lot of content there, and it has been upvoted. It has been, in fact, we also used content to recruit more people, our human resource. And Reddit, actually, we wrote an article about our office, how we built our office, and it reached the top page of Reddit India. That got us 15,000 viewers, page views, plus it got us about 200, 300 very relevant applicants. So content can be used for anything actually, not just for sales. And subreddits have a great advantage of getting a good reach.
Thank you. Next question is from Mahesh. He's asking, it is not true that B2B buyers engage with peers and communities way before they come in contact with our content, in which case the traditional sales funnel does not hold good anymore. In this situation, what could be the content strategy B2B players can adopt?
Okay, so you're saying, is it not true that B2B buyers engage with peers and absolutely. So see, right now when we're talking about content, we're trying to capture these B2B audiences in the discovery phase, right? And a lot of people not only engage with peers, but they also search online, they search in communities. So when you are talking about, referral, so, when B2B buyers engage with peers and communities, that's more sort of a referral lead generation in which somebody would recommend your products or services, which can only happen once you have a small base to begin with, right? So, and the reason why you are essentially targeting these users right now in the discovery phase is when they are not even looking for your product or services, is because you're able to get to them, answer their questions, help them first when they're not even looking for your, product or services. They're not even that buy phase at this moment. They're only, they're only in the discovery phase where they have not even understood what their requirements are. You build that thought leadership, you build that relationship, wherein they will automatically start trusting you because you've helped them in the past. And when these audiences, get converted into your, active customers and they have a great experience, is when they will actually start promoting you with your peers and the community as well. But that is a different channel. We need to understand that inbound is a great way, or content marketing is a great way to build a relationship with people who are not even actually looking for your service or product right now. You're trying to solve all the problems which they have, and in that process build a relationship. And a lot of them will come back to you when they require your products and services.
Thank you so much. Next question is from Anita. She's asking, are there any tools for keywords that one needs to use for distribution through SEO?
Yes, there are a lot of keyword tools available. I think a small, Google search will show you that there's one particular which we use called Longtail Pro. You also have the keyword tools available inside AdWords, available free of cost, which is very relevant. There's one called Uber keywords or something like that. So there are a ton of keyword tools available. At the end of the day, you need to figure out what are the right keywords which have enough searches as well as not very competitive for the stage of your website.
Thank you so much. We are actually over time now. So guys, thank you so much. If you have any other questions, you can just email it to us and we'll answer you directly. Thank you so much, Ankit. Thank you for taking your time out. We'd surely love to have you for leading another webinar in coming time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.